All right. We will call to order the Lake Bluff School District 65 Board of Education regular meeting, October 26, 2010. Our first agenda item this evening will be presentation. Dr. Hendrickson.
With me presenting tonight are Matt Saucedo, Spanish teacher, 7th and 8th grade, and Maureen Sostak. I'm so good at world language myself that pronunciations are an issue, but Maureen teaches 6th, 7th, and 8th grade French. Originally, we had scheduled to put on this program evaluation report for you, I think, in December, but the team, these two and our other members, got involved early, and we dug into the data and got kind of excited about some of it and wanted to share that early with you, as well as making the recommendations so that we can use these next couple months in beginning our work together. So go ahead, Mr. Blackmer, if you'd show the first slide there. You need to uncover my high-tech, there we go.
Nate, can you move the screen a little bit?
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
So this is our team. Brianna Hotchella is Spanish K2, Christina Leibfried, Spanish 3-5, Anna Ogren, Spanish 6, and I've introduced Matt and Maureen to you already. The other three couldn't make it tonight, but we're all involved also in the data review and creating the slides for our report. The next slide covers the cost of the program, which was one of the components of our program evaluation. And this is a lean and mean program. We have 4.32 full-time equivalent staff members running a program that stretches from K to 8 and encompasses almost 900 students. So we're getting a lot of benefit from a fairly small amount of cost in this program. And we're going to go through all of the people that are reaching right now. You can see in kindergarten, first and second grade, we have 89 students, kindergarten 102 and 89. On the right side of the graph, it shows how many minutes per week and how the minutes are broken down. So in kindergarten, 75 minutes per week, 25 minutes times 3 days. And you can follow down and see how it increases over the years that we teach world language. We split in at LBMS into French and Spanish. We're going to talk a little bit about why kids have decided to switch from Spanish to French. But you can see the numbers there. 66 in 6th grade in Spanish, 26 in French. Maureen has some fairly large classes, but that's true actually for Matt in a couple situations as well. They teach 210 minutes a week. With the block schedule at the middle school, it's 2 classes of 84 minutes and 1 class of 42 minutes. Maureen is going to go over some of the research that we did to review what was the purpose of teaching kids in the elementary school and middle school.
Good evening. The first point that we like to make is that starting kids in foreign language early just benefits them in every way. They're much more likely to be able to pronounce the words. Their brain is much more open to those sounds. They're much more open to making those sounds, not as self-conscious. And it's a huge thing when you're speaking a foreign language. Also, knowing this foreign language would facilitate any language skills or studies that they did later in life. So if they decided to switch between French or Spanish or Latin or German or whatever they might decide to do, they've already got the basis down. Some of the research on the benefits of foreign language in the elementary school. Of course, it's going to help you understand your own language as well. I can certainly vouch for that. Never knew what a direct object or a direct object pronoun was until I had to do it in French. There's a certain element there of now you need to really understand this that sometimes is missing in English. It also improves global awareness and appreciation for other cultures. I find that to be a huge aspect of foreign language, no matter what language it is. We're a very global community now. The connections across the world are so important right now in business. You have to be aware of that there are other cultures out there, the way they do things, and have an open and accepting type of an attitude for that. We try to teach them that there are cultures that are different than our own. They're not weird or strange, they're just different, and that we need to have an open mind for those types of things. Foreign language also benefits reading and math achievement. There's very strong research that shows that the The learning that goes on in a foreign language is very similar to the one that goes on in math classes, as far as making the connections in the brain and the vocabulary and the language and how the kids understand that. And fortunately, it works for us the other way as well. Those who are strong in math are very good with foreign language. The purpose of the foreign language at Lake Bluff Middle School is to develop high school level proficiency. We're very proud of what we do, I have to say, especially in communication. All of the world language teachers stress communication. What good is a language if you can't speak it? It's very different from the way that some of us learned a foreign language. It was so much more written in grammar and rote, and now it's much more free thinking. Can I express what I want to say? Also, learning about the culture of the country where the language is spoken, and in French and Spanish, that goes beyond just Mexico and Spain and France. It really covers the world. Making connections and comparisons, that's a learning skill for these kids. If you can look at something in a foreign language and compare it to something that you've previously learned and make those connections and those comparisons, those are thinking skills. And also touching out to the community. We're very lucky in Lake Bluff that we have a lot of kids that have been out of the country, that have traveled the world, have traveled to Europe and Mexico, and can bring back those types of things to us into our classroom. I've had several kids who have lived in Europe that can come in and can talk about their experiences there, which is very fortunate. We also try to get into the community, bringing in speakers, taking field trips, pen pals in other countries, and things like that.
I'm going to cover a little bit of daily instruction. So I'm not going to read them off the list. I've seen a lot of YouTube videos where someone just reads off a PowerPoint. It's kind of annoying. Two of them I'm going to highlight on is our use of technology in the classroom. Right now the students are doing LSRW, which is listening, speaking, reading, writing, to a podcast. Right now they're developing their own nursery rhyme or fairy tale song or a rap. It's really nice. And they have a rubric where they have specific verbs they have to use and specific vocabulary. We've been using rote memory practice each day. And they're recording their song. I also do a lot of the checking to make sure all their grammar is correct and pronunciations to the ability they need to be at. And they record it in GarageBand. It's a program we have for recording music, sounds, doing loops. And they have the beats to it. They can use music that already exists, or they can make up their own, and they also can do a video to it. So they're integrating a video into it, so they have their own music video, and all the students will be able to watch everybody's come Friday. That's happening this week with the 7th grade. You're welcome to come join us. It's a great experience. In addition, in the past 3-4 years, we've integrated these small readers. Pobriana and El Viaje Perdido is what we cover right now in 6th and 7th grade. And what we're doing is we're going to integrate higher levels, since the quality of Spanish students is advancing throughout the year since they've had it since kindergarten. These readers go to their level, so present tense verbs, level 1, and it gets into past tense verbs for level 2, and it can go beyond that once we get to like 8th grade level. Thank you.
Nice job. And in visiting the classrooms across the grade levels, you'll find, especially in world languages, that we have examples of 21st century learning. Was in Anna Ogren's class, Spanish 6th grade, a couple weeks ago, I think. The administrators all stepped in there to take a look at our 3-minute walkthrough process and how that would work. And we were all thrilled to see Anna working with the MacBooks, and the kids were videotaping themselves doing skits. And talk about fully engaged. That entire class was fully engaged in practicing their target language, creating a dialogue between each other, and then being able to share it with the rest of the class. It was a great example of 21st century learning, and you'll see that throughout. Measures of success, as we began this, we discussed even with our colleague over at LFHS, Mary Kay Kerner, the instructional director for world language. How do we measure our success? And we came up with several ways that she helped us with. The first, though, was student enjoyment. And this is a bit hard to quantify, but we thought in terms of, well, if you're really enjoying Spanish in 5th grade, would you switch to French in 6th? And if you were really enjoying Spanish or French in 8th grade, would you switch to something else at LFHS? And I guess the answer to that was, well, yeah, in some cases you would. If you had a family member that spoke French and you were wanting to learn that as a sixth grader, you would switch no matter how much you like Spanish. So we'll go into a little graph, a survey that Maureen put together for us. And then the other two were the placements and the grades. So we'll go into all three of those. Thanks, Nate. This was a survey that Maureen put together and gave to her current sixth grade students. There's about 25 or 26 of them. And I think maybe 23 or so took the survey on that day. They didn't like Spanish, wanted to try something new, was the majority of the group. They had about 17 kids that decided, you know what, I'd like to do something new. Spanish isn't working out for me. And then it goes on down from there, like the way French sounds, always wanted to do that. Family member speaks French or want to visit France. Of the 100 or so students that were taking Spanish in 5th grade, it doesn't jump out at me that this number would want to switch. Nonetheless, we want to certainly work on that top bar and make sure that Spanish in 3rd, 4th, 5th is enjoyable. And we have some ideas for making it more enjoyable. Go ahead. And now the fun data. This pie graph represents our placements, our recommendations for placement this current year. So the 9th graders from Lake Bluff Middle School were recommended, the blue area, were recommended to place in Level 2 Honors French or Spanish. So you can see that just a little over half, or half of our students coming out of our 8th grade program that Maureen and Matt recommended, they felt they were ready for Level 2. This actually reflects a little bit of a pullback of some students that have dropped back from honors to regular. So actually, we did recommend a few more than this, but I wanted to reflect a little bit more accurately what it is right now. But again, based on recommendations, we recommended a little over half to honors. The yellow represents Level 2, and the red is Level 1. Now this becomes really significant, and let me explain the red. The red means that although a child had been involved in French for 3 years, or maybe just 1 year, Spanish for 9 years, or maybe just 1 year, we recommended that they begin again at Level 1, typically Level 1 plus. So you can see that represents about 3 of our students, which is really phenomenal, because one of the goals of this program is to have all kids finish Level 1 high school. And as you can see, we felt pretty securely that they did. The next graph, go ahead, shows all the other feeder schools to Lake Forest High School. Would be Deer Path, St. Mary's, and Country Day. The colors are the same. You see Level 2 honors, recommendations, Level 2, and Level 1. And that's pretty exciting about the results of what's happening here. Now again, this is apples to apples, only compared students that were recommended to continue. If you are to continue in your existing language, this is the level that we expect you to continue at. Typically, you'll find if a kid is recommended to repeat or go into a Level 1 plus class, that child is probably somebody that's frustrated with the language and would prefer to switch language and start anew, unless that student may have moved in 8th grade. The other way we wanted to look at this is, once a child moves in 9th grade to a Level 2 or a Level 2 honors class, how do they fare? So to explain this then, the blue or purple represents the other feeder schools, Deer Path, St. Mary's, and Country Day, and the red is the Lake Bluff students. They're currently sophomores. So we looked at freshman grades last year throughout the year, both trimesters. Freshmen in Level 2 Spanish averaged B pluses from Lake Bluff from Lake Bluff Middle. From all the others, they averaged Bs. So as you can see from the percentages, it's not a big difference, but it is exciting to see that our kids fared better in the same classes than their than the other middle schools that were feeding LFHS. Go ahead, Nate. And this is the Level 2 honors class. The other thing that I want to point out here is that look at the amount of kids that represent in the bottom pie graph the Lake Bluff students. 52 students in Spanish honors last year were Lake Bluff students. From the other feeder schools, which I think represent about 75% of Lake Forest High School, only represented 57. That's really significant. And we see a slight difference in grade point average in world language, Spanish 2 honors. But again, you know, we had so many more percentage-wise students than we should have been expected to have in that class that I would say maybe a small grade point difference would be expected. Maybe a few of those students shouldn't have been in there, and they pulled down our average. But to have 52 out of 109 students from Lake Bluff Middle in the Spanish 2 honors, which is the highest that we would have been allowed to let them go, that's terrific. Go ahead, Nate. Let's look at French now. Same story. French 2, B minus, B minus, slightly higher percentage of grade point in French 2 over the course of last year. And again, a higher than expected number of our students in the French 2 honors class. Dr. Asplund, maybe you can help me, but I've been led to believe that our percentage is 25 to 30% of Lake Forest High School.
Yeah, somewhere between those two percentages.
So we're looking at 25 out of 61 students that are in the honors program in French, and out of 61 students, you would expect to see maybe 18, maybe 20. So again, a nice difference there, and you even see a little bit even more significant grade point average of our students that are in that program. I think this is just really great data. We're recommending more students to go in higher levels than our counterparts, and our students are doing equally or better in most cases in those higher level classes. Now, I didn't look at level 1 or level 1 plus classes because typically those students would be brand new to the language or starting again, or, you know, that's not the goal of this program. The goal of this program, again, was to move kids into level 2 or higher classes. And I think in that regard, it's doing a terrific job with the teachers we have. So then, just to recap, tremendous success at the high school in placements and in grades. Student enjoyment, the students that move into the high school are moving in typically to the recommendations that we give them. We only had 3 students this year that were not recommended for level 2. Most of the rest of those students continued with the language that we recommended them to be a level 2 at, which is good and bad because there's a couple new programs at the high school that our kids haven't been exposed to: Latin, Mandarin, German, and I think all of those are valuable too. So I do want to encourage our students in 8th grade to look at those options as well for their future. But our goal here was to prepare them well for the high school, and we did that. And of course, cost effective at that number and that number of students. We're real pleased. So then, Nate, go ahead to areas that we've kind of identified for improvement. We haven't done a lot of work across the K-8 Spanish program to identify what the learning expectations at each grade level will be. And I think one of the things that Christina and Brianna have talked to me about is, hooray, finally we get some professional development, we get some articulation time, and we can kind of clean up what we do because they have been solely responsible for their programs without a lot of time to articulate, and you know, they didn't ask for that. So it's really a terrific place to start for our program evaluation, that they're excited about upcoming changes. One of the things that we feel that might be happening in 3rd through 5th as well is that we do a lot of introduction in K2, and we do a lot of review in 3-5. Now think about a high school level 1 text. In Spanish, we're asking our students to finish that in 9 years. 1 text, 1 level high school program in 9 years. One of the things that we need to do is identify these learning expectations for kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade, push the envelope a little bit here so that we are challenging our 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders and not saying to them, no, you can't move too quickly because we only have this much to cover. We need to see what they're able to cover and then work from there. So that's going to be our challenge. And I think as a result, we're going to see our 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders in Spanish a little bit more excited about what they do each day. And I hope that doesn't take away from French. But I know Maureen's going to have a chance to get them excited about that too. So, once we identify the learning material, or the learning expectations, we're going to have to look at learning materials as well. We need to increase parent communication in some situations. A couple of the teachers said, you know, I think this could be improved, so we threw that on the list. And then to conduct teacher-to-teacher articulation so that Maureen can talk to the high school about her kids coming up, as well as Brianna can talk to Christy, and Christy to Anna, and Anna to Matt. Go ahead. So then the recommendations: continue to use the target language in at least 90% of instruction at all levels, even in kindergarten. This comes out of the ACTFL, which is basically the governing body of foreign language as far as policy and research. And they're saying at the lowest level even, use the target language as an instructor, because the kids only have so much opportunity to hear it each day. Make the most of that. And I know for the most part our teachers are already doing that. The next one would be to create a K-8 curriculum map. Just talked about that with these learning expectations from grade level to grade level. And then finding appropriate materials, not only especially in 3rd through 5th, but as well Matt has expressed a need to push his kids also, because after 9 years or after 8 years, they move into 8th grade of what essentially is a level 1 high school class. We need to be introducing them to more difficult vocab and grammar structures as well. And he's certainly expressed they're ready for that. So we'll work with Mary Kay over at the high school to make sure that we do a nice fit on that. And then to develop articulation among the teachers. Maureen was joking that she'd like time to talk to herself about her 6th to 7th grade and sure effective methods of parent communication. And finally, this one was something both Matt and Maureen suggested, was to have all of our 8th graders begin taking the National French and Spanish exams, something that's done in middle schools to take a look at levels. And I think we're especially excited about this because as we have such prepared kids, we also want to show the high school that, yes, this is where our recommendation is based from. And this will help solidify ourselves and our recommendations in knowing that kids are ready for more. So that's our excitement, and you'll have a full written report with probably some more detail, I think, at the January board retreat. But we're anxious to get started, and we're really pleased with what we found. So we're happy to take questions.
The benchmarking data with our peer schools is just really compelling, and I wonder, what are we doing that's so amazing with our students to prepare them so well for transition to high school?
I think we have awesome teachers.
It's a really compelling set of numbers, and I think that in all seriousness, teaching staff, teaching methods, it's something that is worth drilling down into to see how we're really outperforming.
It's interesting because, what is it? I think Matt and I teach very similarly as far as use of the language and understanding the language. I also wonder how much the block plays into that as well when they have that 84-minute time structure 2 days a week as opposed to every day. Maybe that has something to do with that.
I agree. There's benefits with the block, especially for foreign language, and we've heard it from our math teachers as well. The block scheduling is very assistful with math and foreign language because we get to cover more. Majority of classes that start with foreign language and shorter classes, which I've taught in, as you have 42 minutes or maybe 37, and you start your opening activity. It could be something in writing, it could be speaking. By then there's 10 minutes, you got 25 minutes left. You get to the core, you start to end up, you assign homework, and they're gone.
Yeah.
And that was the day-to-day with a 42-minute or 35-minute class. The block schedule allows us to really dig down deep and keep them in the target language, strictly immersion, and I feel that we're both always progressing as teachers. We haven't stopped learning as well. We both always investigate and research, and we travel to the foreign country ourselves when we can, and see what methods are being used there as well.
It's just fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
It's great.
Thank you.
May I piggyback my quick staff development?
Sure.
One of the exciting things that happened this month with our staff development, we sent a team of individuals to two different things. Administrators primarily went to a presentation by Ed Coughlin, who is a representative from Materi Group, 21st Century Learning, and we spent the day with him, looked at different themes and strands and some research, and as well as some ways that different districts are approaching infusing 21st century learning into their programs. Thanks, Maureen. And as a result of that, the team that was there came up with the strong feeling that self-directed learning needs to be our first attack. This is the area that we feel that our students could most benefit early on, and some of the other strands of 21st century learning would more easily fall in place if we took this on as a first. So then the following week in mid-October, at the Rosemont Conference Center, there was a 21st Century Learning Conference, and about 7 or 8 of us went to different pieces of that conference. Ken Kay, from the president of Partnership for 21st Century Skills, Rick Dufour, quite a few different big names were there to talk about how the world has changed, how our students need to be different to be ready for it, and how we can begin making that change in the schools. So each of us came away feeling like, wow, I learned a neat piece. We're going to be getting together, I hope, in the next week or two to kind of debrief, because not all of us got to see each piece. But we are excited to know our direction here in Lake Bluff is that we're going to focus this year and possibly some of next year on the self-directed learner. That was probably the majority of what we did. So I know Ann has some good things that her groups have done, so I'll let her do that. But thank you very much. Question?
Thank you.
All right, next presentation. Jane, do we have an overview of the financial audit?
Yeah, the auditor couldn't be here this evening, so I'm just going to read all 50 pages of the audit. No, in a nutshell, it was a very good audit. There were no findings whatsoever. We will, or should receive the financial recognition from the state board again this year. That'll come out in a few weeks. Fund balances grew again this year. I think has been our trend, but overall it was a very, very good audit. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
All right, next would be communications and questions from visitors. Okay, there being none, we will move on to reports. Kate with the PTO report first.
Hello. Since our people don't get paid or get raises, I'm going to give them praises. So I'm just going to give names to the people who've done all the work. So we just distributed our directory that went out around the time of Pumpkin Fest and went home in the backpacks of the youngest, I think, in the families. And that was done by Leslie Habgen. And more directories, if you need another copy for your other car, they're $5, and I think that's on the website. We wrapped up, our wrapping paper fundraiser. That was done by Annie Calhoun. We raised about $7,000, and we'll have the pickup for people who had their wrapping paper shipped to the school on November 9th. We also held the elementary book fair. We grossed over $18,000, and normally we would get 50% of that in scholastic dollars. But since we're flush with scholastic dollars, we decided to take the cash option, which was $4,300. And that we also collected 690 used books to go to needy homes. And we want to thank Katie Evelet for her efforts in that. Pumpkin Fest, hopefully a lot of you were there and enjoyed it. It was a huge success. The weather certainly helped. We don't have final numbers yet, but it looks like we netted about $20,000. So it was very successful. A big thank you to Lauren Kettemeyer and Rich Martin and Ann Hardy, who was instrumental in a lot of the sponsorships for the Chase. The Chase numbers were up this year, again, partially due to the weather and also the registration on the web store. We had 205 5K runners and 265 fun runners. So that's up quite a bit from last year. We also want to say thank you to Noodle Bar and Innovasi for donating the food for the Friday night event. Our enrichment programs are underway. We have a great, very exciting lineup put together by Barbara Annan and her team of Kim Landon and Rose Jackson. On October 18th, the first graders enjoyed Spirit of the Eagle, which is a program we've had just about every year. In November, something new, we have a 2-day poet in residence at the elementary school, which is going to be exciting. And then also in November, on the 22nd, I believe, the 5th graders are going to do a science unit on force and motion using Lego. My 4th grader is very excited about that. He hopes they do it again next year when he gets to do it. Some news from the middle school. They recently purchased a microwave and coffee maker for the teacher's lounge, which I think was well received. And then a plug for them, too. We also need a vice treasurer for our middle school board. At this point, really, they'll take anyone who could punch the numbers on a calculator. So, please, we need a treasurer. At the elementary school, we've installed the basketball hoops, bulletin boards, and the benches and tables are in their hopefully final stretch of installation. So we have all those new additions. And that I have to thank Jerry Garrity for arranging and coordinating that event. Some reminders. We have yearbooks for sale in the web store only through November 1st, which is next Monday, both for the elementary and the middle school. So please go buy your yearbook. Also on November 1st, we are putting in a new installation of spiritware on the web store. And I got a peek at these items today. It's really cool stuff. A lot of it just says Lake Bluff on it, so it's really appropriate for adults and kids. My favorite item is that there's actually a blanket. So for all those cold sporting events, I can wrap myself up in a Lake Bluff fleece blanket. So those will be available November 1st, and there'll be items in the elementary school office to go peek at, too, but the web store will have pictures of everything. And then in November, our other upcoming event is we're having a holiday vendor boutique, and there was an address correction. It's at 361 Belforet, not 369 as originally put up. And that's on November 11th in the evening. I think the hours are like 7 to 10, but the information's on the website. And these are local vendors selling great gifts for holiday items, and 20% of the proceeds will go back to the PTO. And this is not a PTO event, but I wanted to give a plug for the kickball event that's being held by the teachers on November 5th. The PTO will be there cheering on the teachers. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Dr. Esplin, Superintendent Report.
Thank you. A few items to report. One, the school report card will be coming out on the 31st of October. We did receive an early copy of it, and we'll be reviewing that either at next month's board meeting or the one after that. Nothing of surprise. Our ISAT scores remained unchanged from what we'd reported earlier. There are some interesting financial figures in there that we'll have to explain that we'll show you when we get it, but it looks like we spent most of our money on other rather than instruction, but it directly reflects the fact that we built a building, and so it goes back to that year, and so they only do it in ratios, and so it looks a little odd, but it's a one-year blip in the reporting, which has to be. I mean, it's accurate, but because we built the building that year, of course, more money went to that than anything else. So we'll be reviewing that in more detail later when you can see it in person. Secondly, I reported last month that the office, central office, district office would be moving. Now I can report the move has been a success, and a big thanks goes to Jane and to Marilyn Rowland for organizing that whole move, and within really 2 days after the move, it was as if we'd been there a long time. So
Whole office gets a lot of credit. Everybody, the office gets a lot of credit.
I'll take credit for my own office. That'd be about it. I really am not going to take any other credit. It was really a well-planned move by everyone that planned it, and I would invite anybody to come by and see. It's at 900 North Shore Drive, Suite 220. And as you come up the stairs, it's on the what? I guess that'd be the northwest corner of the building. I sent out an Alert Now message today, which is the new, there used to be Instant Alert by Honeywell. We switched over to Alert Now this year for basically the same price that we were paying Honeywell. And I had advocated for this change as we used Alert Now in my previous district. It's much more user-friendly, has a lot more features with it. And so hopefully you received a message at home saying that school's getting out early tomorrow, just as kind of a reminder, as a test run, to make sure that it works, and I'll check the reporting on it tomorrow to make sure that it reached everybody that it was supposed to reach. And we plan to use that intermittently, not too much. We don't want to burden people with lots of phone calls from the school, but at the same time, we'd like to use it for more than just school cancellations, reminders of parent-teacher conferences and things of that sort, that we can use them. And
John, that should have gone to everyone with a student's home.
whatever numbers they listed with Power School.
Okay. And if people did not get that message, is there something?
If they didn't get it, first of all, it should show up on my report.
Okay.
I get a report of who did and who didn't get it. And so if you didn't get a message, I don't want to tell you to email me because it could be a lot of people. So I don't know what, I'm going to check tomorrow. I actually can tell.
Well, it makes you feel any better, we got the message before it came to the board.
Okay. Should have been at 5:30. That was when it was set to be delivered. I think that it should be fine. I will be double checking the report. Right? It's very good. It shows you who answered the call but hung up, who didn't get the call, who there was, the number wasn't working or whatever. It's a very detailed report. And so I should be able to tell. And hopefully it got to everybody. But it was, Katie Williams is the one that gave me the idea to send it out. And it was a good idea. And it's, one, to remind folks that we are having an early out tomorrow, but two, to test the system. The final thing I wanted to bring up was that we have, I'd reported this last year and a little bit earlier this year, that we'd started our administrative walkthroughs. We had a new member this year with Dr. Henderson coming on board, so we've been working on some inter-rater reliability, and we've done some testing of it. And now each administrator has a goal of 100 walkthroughs before Christmas. So, let's see, I have to remember one. There's 8 of us right here. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of us. So there's 600 walkthroughs should be done in total before Christmas. And that should be able to provide us a wealth of data going forward to see that the instructional program that we have planned is going forward appropriately. We know that it is, but this is also a way to prove it and to identify places where perhaps we need some more staff development. It's really not to look at any one individual teacher, but to look at the entire program of education that we offer. We try to hit every classroom and go throughout the building. Now, Mr. Blackmer and Mrs. Williams will only be within their building, but Ms. Tomei and Dr. Wirtz, Dr. Henderson, and I will be in both buildings and going through and conducting as many walkthroughs as we can. You could only be in there 3 minutes, so in a half hour you can hit 10 classrooms, no problem. So hopefully we can get this, reach our goal of 100 by Christmas. And I'll let you know intermittently how that's working. That's my report.
Okay. Thank you. I do not have a president report, so we will move on to standing committees. First one, District Curriculum Committee. We talked about this. We were going to take it off, right? Or what were we going to do?
Well, we don't have, well, I shouldn't speak for you. I doubt you have a report because we talked
Right,
about
we
it.
don't have a report, and you're right, we are talking about taking this off as we roll in, I believe, our 2020 probably committee report
Right,
as time goes on.
but we decided to wait until board elections in April.
Okay. NSSED.
Did meet, and the governing board got a tour of the new North Shore Academy building, which is very nice, beautiful. Lots of nice things about it. Lots, like our new building, lots of open space and lots of nice natural light, not quite as much as ours, but it's not as green as ours. We also met the new business director, Seth Chapman, who is doing some very nice things in the business office. He's done some impressive organizational things to create some backups that weren't necessarily there, that are going to be good for the staff and for the organization as a whole. And he's working to further refine the NSSED calendar so that we will have yet more time to review that before we've got to make a decision on the budget. So it was a good meeting.
Thank you. Finance and Facilities?
Well, we did meet on Monday of last week, and we covered 3 topics, one of which Jane just covered, which was the financial audit for 2010, which, as Jane indicated, we should be receiving financial recognition for the outstanding audit. And again, the financial position for this district is in very good shape. We also talked a little bit about the upcoming tax levy. That's going to be something we'll discuss in November. But we talked about the implications of a lower EAV that we're going to be dealing with, and the expectation that that will result in a tax increase in order to keep our budgets sound and able to continue with the level of employment and education that we have of our students. And then the third thing we talked about, just coming back to the levy, we're going to talk about it in November, but we will not make it final until the December board meeting. So it's a process of educating and discussing before we get to that point. And the third thing we did talk about comes back to the East School and the plans for the East School going forward, which is also on our agenda tonight, and I'm sure Dr. Asplund will have more to say about it. But beyond the East School and the actions that we want to take on that, we also talked about the renovations that are required for the middle school regarding the lavatories and the science rooms, and we will be making plans to move forward with those later this year, and hopefully with the work being done sometime next year. And that's what we did.
Can I say one thing? Sure. I would, Mr. Carney, you mentioned that there would be a tax increase. I guess the one thing I want to say is that there could be a rate increase, that it may not be a tax bill increase. Yeah, and so it may be. I mean, there's no promises at this point, but the rate will more than likely go up. But we are trying to project into the future as best we can to see that the tax bill for an individual homeowner shouldn't either appreciably increase or increase. That we're trying to keep that as close to static as we can, so that, if people just turn it on and heard tax increase, that there is some, that's still somewhat of a nebulous position. We've gone off of the projections from Shields Township, the assessor's office.
Right.
And Jane, please correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it was 8.4%?
Yeah, we're looking at,
Reduction?
in general, an 8% decline in the total EAV.
Right. And so that the tax cap formula through the PTEL law would necessitate a tax increase if we did nothing to the extension, to the levy. And at this point, we're probably going to recommend letting the levy go to wherever it can. And we'll be able to get pretty close with people if their houses are a certain value to say your school taxes may go up $10, may go up $100. I mean, we can try to get as close as we can, but we don't ultimately know what it's going to be until, what, Jane, March?
End of March, first part of April, typically.
But the tenor of the meeting is yes. The rate will go up, more than likely. We will recommend it anyway. I mean, that's the main point.
Okay, John, thanks for the clarification.
Okay, shared services. There was a meeting, and Dr. Esplin, if I can defer to you, as I was not in
Sure.
attendance.
We had a meeting a week or so ago at district, Lake Forest district offices. And that was a meeting with the Dr. Griffith and I and Dr. Hendrickson, and we were discussing the 2020 Vision Project with the Lake Forest Board of Education as well, the representatives from 67 and 115, and talking about going forward the process whereby each district, the 3 districts, will all be involved in the 2020 visioning process, but each district has its own plan. And so we're keeping our individual district autonomy, and yet we're all moving forward in concert in general, but there's no specific locked-in plan for all 3 districts to act identically the same all the time. But we are sharing initiatives in terms of staff development, in community engagement, and in the bigger tent items of the goal of moving all 3 districts towards a futuristic view of what education should look like. And the whole meeting revolved around that concept. And was very well received by everyone there, and have not set a plan for another meeting yet, but we all agreed that we needed to meet sometime in the winter.
Thank you. Green Team? Okay. Social Committee?
And did not meet.
Next agenda item would be action items. The first one being personnel recommendations. Someone wants to make the motion?
I move that the Board of Education approves the personnel recommendations per the attachment.
Second.
Any discussion or questions? Dr. Esplin, if you can, I need to bring mine up, but if you can give us an overview.
Sure. We have 2 leaves of absence that are maternity leaves for 2 teachers, Frances Zale and Amanda Noble. And we also are recommending the employment of Lynn Perschke for the long-term substitute for Kristen Rankins. You'd already approved her maternity leave previously.
Any questions or additional discussion needed on that? Okay, Terry, roll call vote, please.
Eric Wagner.
Yes.
Mary Jane Brady.
Yes.
Kim Burke.
Yes.
Terry Carney, yes.
Okay. Next action item, approval of the 2010 annual audit.
I move that the Board of Education approves the 2010 annual audit as presented.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion or questions on that? Roll call on this one?
No, you can voice vote.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next would be the fiscal year 2011 school library grant program application.
I move that the Board of Education affirms that the information submitted on the fiscal year 2011 school library grant program application is correct.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion or questions on this?
Voice vote.
Okay, is this something we do every year? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next action item, snow removal for 2010-2011. I move that the Board of Education approves the contract with Building Maintenance Systems, Inc. for snow removal and de-icing at Lake Bluff Elementary School for the 2011 season at a cost of $8,807.
Second.
Any discussion? Jane, you want to?
Just, this was the same company we used last year, and it was a very good experience for our first year of outsourcing it, so we'd like to have them back. And
We did have 2 bids, correct?
yes, yes,
And this
Quotes.
is 2 quotes.
All right, 2 quotes.
And this is only for the elementary school?
correct. Our guys still handle middle school.
Okay. Any additional discussion? Okay, roll call on this one, please.
Terry Carney, yes. Kim Burke.
Yes.
Mary Jane Brady.
Yes.
Eric Wagner.
Yes.
Okay. Policy approval.
I move that the Board of Education approves the revisions to policies, administrative procedures, and exhibits as per attached.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on this?
Nothing changed from last month.
Okay. And can we voice vote this one?
No, you need to roll call.
Okay, roll call, please.
Eric Wagner.
Yes.
Mary Jane Brady.
Yes.
Kim Burke.
Yes.
Terry Carney, yes.
Okay, next action item, destruction of East School and renovation of middle school.
I move that the Board of Education gives approval for the administration to seek bids for destruction of East School and renovation of the middle school science labs and bathrooms.
Second.
Okay, discussion on this.
Okay, I believe for those watching at home, there should be a visual for you, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page as we go forward here. We've prepared a timeline of events that is not completely all-inclusive, but captures the highlights of what has happened pertaining to East School, at least in the last 6-7 years. So in October of 2004, there was a district-wide strategic planning process that identified the assessment of facilities as a strategy. So then in late winter, early spring of 2005, in that same school year, a facility action team, which was taken out of that strategic planning process, met and determined that there was a need for a new building, which of course we have built, and we all love it. And it's made the need for East to basically go away once we found a place for the district office and maintenance staff, which we have since done. In, bless you, in late 2006 calendar year, there was a community engagement process that developed a plan to build a new school and to recommend renovations to middle school. which we will revisit here in a bit. Referendum passed. We created the East School Task Force to investigate the potential uses and funding for the East School building. This East School Task Force was comprised of school community people, and the options were to use the building as a community center or to raise the building and create open green space. The task force indicated they did not want the building to pull financial resources from the school district, and this information was presented to the board in May of 2009. In October of 2009, a new district-wide strategic planning session met again, and as I promised you 2 months ago, we would review the strategic plans of all four. Last month we did 2. This month, this ties right in. There was a facility action team created, a new one, and in the winter of last school year, that team met, and once again it was comprised of school and non-school community people. And they were formed and met to review the issue of East School, the middle school, and the space for district offices and the maintenance department. And their final recommendation for East was to tear it down and create open green space. And they also recommended that we renovate the middle school science labs and restrooms. So tonight, this motion is the culmination of this long, long process that we are wanting to move forward with that plan. We have looked and looked and looked for a reason to save East School. And apart from during these bids, we want to make it clear we are asking as part of the bid that we haven't written yet because we have to work through that with the architect, but to save certain portions of the building. One being the mural, which is already kind of a done deal, that will be moved somewhere within the district. And 2, the front archway of the building that says Lake Bluff Schools, that would be saved as well. There is some discussion about the fireplace, although that would be lower down on the list and could be more expensive, and we'll have to cost that out and see what becomes of that. Apart from that, we will have some other brainstorming sessions to see what else is out there in terms of possibly wanting to save, but there isn't much left in the building that would be worth saving. For the most part, we are recommending that the building be raised. However, certain portions of it would be saved to memorialize that space. And then we are talking about making that space where the building is now, including the parking lot, just the parking lot to the south of the building, to become green space. And all that means right now is it's green space. Eventually, we would probably put together another group of folks to talk about what would that space be used for, but I can speak for Mr. Blackmore, I believe, at this point, and say the middle school could really use some extra space to be able to have student congregation points, to have for PE, wellness, to have for a garden possibility, things of that sort. So at this point, all we're saying is to make it green space. We're not going to recommend selling the parcel. We're not going to recommend building anything else on it. All we're recommending is that it becomes green space for some student use out there for the future. Anything that I missed? So now you would need, actually you would, because we're just seeking bids, so it's just a voice vote, because you're not spending money.
And then what is the process? What are the various steps?
Thank you. The next steps would be that one goal would be to have the building raised and have green space there by summer. Okay, and then we are also looking at renovating the science labs and the restrooms in the summer of 2011, so that when school starts in August of 2011, there will be green space to the east of the middle school, and they will have newish science labs, I mean, they're renovated so that they work, functional science labs and newer fixtures in the restrooms. And the process then is we also have the process through the village that we have to apply for the permit to raise the building, which we'll be turning that paperwork in, assuming that the motion passes. We'll be turning that paperwork in very soon. There's a waiting period there. During that waiting period of time of a minimum of 90 days, we would be working with the architect and getting all the details worked in to actually go out to bid for this project to raise the building. And we must abate the asbestos in the building prior to knocking it down, which sounds odd maybe to some folks listening out on the TV, but that's the state law, that we do have asbestos in there that we have to abate prior to knocking the building down. So that will be done.
Can we start the asbestos abatement as soon as we...
Anytime, yes.
Yeah, I met with our environmental consultants today, actually. They've seen the space once before, but just to review it. Then they'll develop, it'll be a fairly simple abatement, actually, since most of it is floor tile that's been identified.
Well, and
So
it's
they'll-
nice that the building's empty, I'm sorry, Jane, that it's empty because they won't have to
It will
spend
be
all
empty.
the money to quarantine the building off because they don't have to save it for those folks that are still inhabiting the building. There isn't anybody inhabiting the building. So it will be a bit cheaper and quicker to do it this way.
I want to add, when we're talking about timelines, we're working with BLDD to refine estimates as best they can as far as the renovation, in addition to the asbestos and the middle school work, because we do have a finite amount of dollars. And so once we get some more refined as cost estimates, we're going to take a look, and then we'll incorporate the savings of, the archway and things like that as a part of that. So we'll know before we go to bid what we think bids are going to come in at, and then if we need to do some ad alternates again or something like that, we can do that. But we've got a finite amount of dollars. We think we can get all this work done with it, but we'll know more information in the next coming weeks.
And I'd just like to sort of remind some of the members of the public who may have forgotten the I would believe to be a very, very long and deliberative process that we went through with the East School Task Force that concluded over a year ago, but which ultimately concluded, rightly so, that the other alternative here, which would have been, adapting the space to, or the facility to, some sort of community center type of use, would have been extremely expensive. We're talking several $1 million, and that is just something that could not have been supported without additional, additional money from other sources. And our primary mission here is to educate the children of the district. That would be a very big distraction, as we all know. In these economic times, every dollar counts. It was a very it was a hard recommendation to make for the East School Task Force, but the task force made that, and it's great that we're here today, over a year later after those recommendations came down, looking at delivering on some of the recommendations that were forwarded by that group, including the architectural preservation element, which I think is near and dear to a lot of people in our community and is part of this whole cultural resonance of that facility. Those are the key elements that I think deserve protection. So I'm really glad to see that coming forward.
I think, too, that it doesn't hurt to once again thank the hours and hours, Eric, that you and Eric Grenier and Corinne and some others put in on that task force, including many community members, too. So thank you very much.
Okay. Anything else anyone wants to discuss? No? Okay, we can do a voice vote on this one?
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes. Next would be the settlement agreement approval. I move that the Board of Education approves the settlement agreement with the Lake Bluff Teachers Council as presented.
Second.
Discussion on this?
This is an agreement that both sides, the Teachers Council and the Board of Education, worked on jointly to rectify a contractual glitch that existed in our current collective bargaining agreement. And I'm proud of both sides for coming to an amicable agreement to basically abrogate the last year of the agreement and just move forward and say, you know what, we're gonna negotiate a new contract starting next year. So as you've seen in the settlement agreement, this means that both sides must agree to begin negotiating a new contract no later than January 15th, 2011. So excited to have that moving forward and happy that it's been an amicable process.
Okay. Any additional discussion on this one? Okay, roll call vote, please. Terry?
Kim Burke,
Yes.
Mary Jane Brady,
Yes.
Eric Wagner,
Yes.
Terry Carney, yes.
Okay, next action item would be possible action as a result of executive session. And I move that we approve the revision to Dr. Ann Wert's contract as discussed in executive session.
Second.
Okay, any additional discussion on this? Okay, roll call vote, please, Terry?
Eric Wagner,
Yes.
Mary Jane Brady,
Yes.
Kim Burke, Terry Carney, yes.
Okay, next would be the consent agenda. I move to approve the following items on the consent agenda that are displayed on the screen.
Second.
Any additional discussion? No? Okay, roll call vote, please.
Eric Wagner,
Yes.
Mary Jane Brady,
Yes.
Kim Burke,
Yes.
Terry Carney, yes.
Okay. New business. Determine board retreat date for January 2011.
Yes, we would like to have at least the morning of a Saturday in January, and I would not recommend the first, and would not recommend the 22nd as well. That's the jazz band jamboree that's all day, and that may be taking some of us away, so we wouldn't want to do that day as well. So that looks at the 8th, the 15th, and the 29th. So,
29th is the weekend of teacher conferences.
yes, that's true, so you might want to go for the 15th.
Okay.
I mean, the 8th too, but
My January's pretty open at this point,
that's why we're doing it now.
so I'm okay for either.
15th?
The 15th, just so you know, is part of a 3-day weekend. Martin Luther King Day.
Martin
So
Luther King
Yes,
Day.
it is.
That's a good point. How about the 8th?
I could make it work.
Okay, sounds like we're the 8th.
So January 8th in the AM?
Good job, Kathleen. The 8th in the morning, yes. Okay, thank you.
Was that like an 8 to 12 thing?
Yes. We'll say 11:30.
And what does our retreat this time focus on?
Academic goals, the evaluation plan that Dr. Hendrickson focused on, and administrator goals, midterm goals. It's all just goals and progress achievement towards those goals.
Okay. Any other new business?
Oh, I have some. We, this week and last week, were given the results of, by Lead and Speak of the Illinois, what is it actually called?
Survey.
Youth Survey. And I presume, Ann, that we will be having a presentation.
We had that last month
We didn't have all of the data, did we, at that time when we had it?
when Carly did it.
Do we have it all at that point? Oh, okay. So
And-
we're going to get then just the written,
We will post the executive summary on the board website tomorrow, and I have hard copies of the presentation for the board members who want them tonight, and I'll email an electronic copy tomorrow to the rest of them. And I do want to mention that I do have the Talking Tips brochure for parents. One of the outstanding points from that presentation today was parents need to talk to their kids about the use and abuse of alcohol and drugs, set expectations, and continue talking about them. If you don't know how to do it, we have a brochure to help you that ranges from ages 4 to 21.
Well, and you bring up a great point. I think, even though we got the data last month, it would probably be a good idea to have the what does this mean kind of
And we certainly would.
presentation. I think would be great.
yeah, there were some real interesting
There
things.
were some different things that we were told today than we were told last time.
And perhaps if the brochure, if it's okay, perhaps we could, have an electronic version of that, maybe on our website too, on the parent page?
Yeah, I'll actually
maybe-
ask Lead for it. The other thing, I think, a big important takeaway was we have prescription collection boxes at the Lake Bluff Police Department that you can drop off prescription medicines, including narcotics, even some over-the-counter medicines that students may be abusing. So get rid of them in a safe place right here in the police department, no questions asked.
Thanks, Ann. Any other new business? Okay. Old business. Anyone else bring up? Okay, next agenda item would be adjournment.
I move that we adjourn.
Second? All those in favor? Aye. Meeting is adjourned.